Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new series that I'm gonna start recording on YouTube. In this series, I'm gonna be making a small game with the engine Construct 3. I'm gonna be using the premium full version of the engine. It's an engine I have a pretty sturdy experience on, and actually I stopped using it for a while. And recently I had a niche to kind of use it again. So I bought a subscription, and then I was like, actually, I don't really know what to do with this. So why not make a series since that I already know this engine pretty well. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to make this game to also make a series, and I'm not really sure how far this project will go, but we're going to be making a sort of a creature capture game, kind of like an old school Pokemon game. Um, so without too much discussion, let's just go ahead. I'm going to click here, no thanks, and I'm going to connect with my account. Oops, sorry. My account as the premium version. So I'm just going to connect. That way I can start working. And so I'm going to cover really everything because this, as I said, I haven't used this engine for a while. So everything has been reset to the default. So first of all, I'm just going to give you a little tour, and I'm also going to talk a little bit before we get started. Sorry if you don't like that, just skip ahead. So just so you know, in view here you have the add-on manager, and I'm going to be using a vanilla version of, so no, zero add-on, because there's a lot of errors that can pop up with add-ons, and I prefer to keep my construct completely clean. We're also gonna just go in the settings and set some basic settings. So I'm going to remove the enable UI animation and enable UI effects. It's just making the UI a bit more drab, but also more lightweight. And so I prefer to do that. I'm going to remove the notifications as well, the break. I don't need any of that. I'm going to be setting my theme to light, or sorry, no theme. That's the reason for that is that most of you are probably going to take dark, and that way you can kind of distinguish my screen from your screen more easily. But you do whatever you want in terms of theme, and you can even install your own theme. I'll show you a theme later on in this series. It's kind of an add-on, but that's the only exception to the rule of no add-on. It's the theme, because the theme doesn't have any impact on the actual game. We're also going to put the name of our own name. So we're also going to put the email. So if you want to contact me, and my website, and the full animation speed 0. That's what I usually do. The reason for that is going to be understood later when we actually use it a little bit more, the engine. Down there we have some more options. Keep your engine unstable, and disable show the startup page. Occasionally show messages, disable. Translate expressions, disable. This is very important. It makes it so you're going to be able to follow along what I type, because otherwise what you type in the expression boxes when they're kind of interface for you to enter some code lines and stuff like that, it's going to have to be like in French or whatever language you're using. For me it would be French if everything was set up usually in my native language. This is a new feature. We're going to keep it on, and we're going to set up well, there's one last option really that we have to pay attention to. It's limit editor preview to WebGL1. We're going to set that to on for now. And you might not want to do that if you're doing a new kind of game with 3D features and stuff like that. But the game I'm going to be doing is going to be totally 2D because I consider the engine to be kind of unstable in 3D or kind of in the experimental stage. So I prefer to keep the game totally 2D or very limited in terms of effects. And we're going to keep this on for now. It says for testing purposes. It is for testing, but the real goal really is to make the game as portable as possible. Construct is a JavaScript engine. The main feature of the engine is to be able to make a portable game that are able to be brought to different kinds of machine through the web page, the browser. You can obviously export for other platform, but one of the most unique feature of Construct is really that it's kind of like the one in the lineage of kind of like Adobe Flash and the web game. You know, it's like the engine that is really able to create something very lightweight. So I'm gonna go along that philosophy and keep the preview limited to WebGL1, and I'm gonna remove WebGPU, which is the new rendering, which is experimental. But you might want to keep that unchecked, and that you might want to keep it to auto or even yes, depending on what you want to do with the engine. So then we close and we have to restart. So just press Control R and we'll restart. Oh, actually it logged me out for some reason. All right, it's very bright, but as I said, the goal is to make this easy to follow and recognize from your regular setup. All right, so now that this is all set up, we're gonna create a new project. So to do that, it's up here in menu, project, and new. You click there, and in my case, it's gonna be the Pokemon kind of game. So I'm gonna go with the retro style, and then I'm gonna double these values. So, oops, sorry, I messed up. So retro style, and then 640 by 360. So I don't really know if there's a different way. It's 320. Wait, did I mess that up? Yeah, 640 by 360. Yeah, okay. That's the ratio we want there, 16:9. And the orientation is going to be any, and this is fine and optimized for pixel art. We want that, and we're going to say creature capture. I'm going to call it like that for now until I find a better name for the project. I'm going to click on create. There we go. We are brought to the original kind of page. I won't cover all the very basics because you can always go on the Construct official YouTube channel, or you can go on a different kind of YouTube channel to find these information. And in the bottom right, I have displayed kind of my keyboard, so you can see what keys I'm pressing to do different kinds of actions. So hopefully, maybe I should make this a bit bigger. There we go. So hopefully you're able to kind of follow along. So we have the layout, we have the project. Depending on what we click on, we're gonna have different options, obviously. So one of the first thing I like to do is just go back to the creature capture and just check out stuff here, make sure I didn't forget anything. So loader style, I prefer to put a %text, kind of removes the default engine splash screen, and if I forget to really finish the game, it makes the prototype a bit more kind of professional by making it so that we don't get the icon of the studio, the engine kind of showing up. So I prefer to put %text. We're gonna put the full screen quality to I because one reason why I doubled the screen of the viewport is that even though I want everything to be pixel art, I want the text to possibly be rendered using normal fonts that are going to be kind of pixelized fonts, or I don't know how I can say that, but so that's the reason why I'm going to put the full screen quality to I, because this affects the way that texts are being rendered. So if I show you later, you're going to have the chance to see the difference. So this affects the way that texts are rendered mostly. We're going to remove pixel round for now, and in advanced, just make sure the web GPU is going to be no for now. Um, and we're going to disable the anisotropic filtering, which is kind of affects the final look of the image. And since we are going for near sampling, I don't think we need that one very much. It's mostly for 3D and stuff. So we can turn that off for now. I think I'm gonna keep it like that for now. So let's click back on our layout, and this is gonna be one of the layout. Obviously this is just the first layout just to test things out. I'm gonna basically I'm gonna start by right clicking and just making a new object, and one of the first thing I'm gonna do is create a sprite. So the sprite is the most basic kind of object. You have a lot of objects that are kind of available with the construct engine. So we're going to use sprite. You can search here for the name sprite. There's sprite. You can also find the sprite font. So I'll talk about this eventually. Or you can ask a question in the comments. So let's choose sprite. And in sprite, we're going to name it. And we're just going to call this player ground anchor. Or maybe we can just call it the ground player. Because basically, the way that I'm going to build everything is going to be using different kinds of objects, and I'm going to kind of combine them to get different kinds of effects. So I have a lot of kind of very kind of wacky and long experience with construct teaching and creating prototypes on it. So I'm going to just go ahead and you're going to see how I kind of make stuff eventually. So let's just call it the ground player. And we get a crosshair, we just click, and it opens the sprite editor. This is the first time we get this editor. So this editor, we want to configure it right away. So up here, we're going to go and configure the grid. And I'm going to do a 1x1 grid, and I'm going to snap to the edge. And I'm going to open the color and set the 255, 255, both for green and blue. So it gives me a cyan. Press OK. And then you click here again and you get a grid. Now you can see this is it's too big. It's a 250 by 250. Just give me a sec. I just want to open some useful software for this presentation. All right, perfect. So at the bottom, we can see that the size of the screen is 250 by 250. So we can see it right down there. All right. So basically, we want to change that. So this is going to be the player. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to move in and kind of say that for this project, we're going to go with the 32 by 32 kind of a basic entity size. So the button that you want to press is resize, and you want to choose 32 by 32 for the whole kind of square. Remember, this is kind of the image of the ground player object that we just created. This is what's written at the very top here in this area, ground player. So just kind of, that's what it's for there. So now that I resized the canvas, I'm going to fill it. So I'm going to pick the fill, and I'm going to pick color 255. And just click, it's going to fill, and click on this collision and make sure that you have a full box. If you don't have a full box, you can click these and move them. And if you did the grid thing, it's going to snap to the pixels, so it's going to be very easy to rebuild kind of your object's collision. All right, so let's just check one last thing, which is the image point just above, and make sure it's in the middle at 16, 16. If it's not at the middle, just set it to 16, 16. So that's it. We press X and it's going to save our object. And we can just see now we have this object. And so we press play and we have this cube there, but nothing happens. Okay. So this game of Pokemon, you know, the main way that we control it, that's the inspiration I'm going for. it's going to be kind of using the arrows. Okay, so for that I'm gonna click on behavior for now, click add new behavior, and now I'm gonna add something called an 8 direction. Now an 8 direction is just a way to move your kind of your player or whatever you choose. So we're gonna click on this 8 direction and press on this X button, and now our player will have the 8 direction behavior, and we can just set different values. And the most important thing to set is the set angle. You want to set that to no, that way you don't have kind of a weird effect. If you don't set that to no and you press play, you can now move around by default, but you see that your square will rotate everywhere, and that's not what we want, because oh, actually I just noticed that the preview isn't working. Okay, give me a sec. All right, sorry everyone, I cut off because I was trying to find a way to stream the preview, and I figured it out now. So let me just try it. So now I can press play and you can see what I'm doing. And since we put the 8 direction on this ground player object, now if we move, it's all rotating kind of weird. Maybe that's not what we want. In my case, it isn't what I want, because, well, it just isn't. I'm just gonna make something that's more kind of rigid. So in my case, I'm gonna turn that off, this set angle, and that's gonna make it so that now it's just kind of moving the cube, which is often how you want it to be inside a game. Sometimes you want the collision to be kind of static, depending on the game you want to make. But just be aware that this is an easy way for you to get it to rotate or to not rotate, essentially. So there we have it. We have our ground player. So this is very simple. We're going to create a simple camera system. So we're going to right click, and we won't use this 3D camera because it's a bit experimental. We're just going to make, we're just going to make a sprite again and call it a 2D camera. All right, just click. Make this object 32 by 32. And I'm just going to basically click on this box, and I'm going to go in the gray, 128, 128, 128, like that. And I won't put any border, and I'm just going to draw a simple little camera there. Something very simple. This is just debugging programmer art, as we say, and we'll get real art later on. So this is going to be our camera, 2D camera. Okay, the way this is going to work, first of all, actually, I'm going to make this object transparent. I'm going to do it here, 20%, partially transparent for now. And I'm going to basically use a behavior on this object called scroll to. Okay, and scroll to is a way for you to decide where the camera should be placed. So if I place this object up here on my character and I press play, this is what I'm going to be seeing. But then if I put my scroll to down there and then I press play, then I don't see the character, because the part of the screen I'm seeing is the part of the screen that has this scroll to thing on it. Okay, scroll to. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be syncing this object with this ground player. So as we move the ground player, we want the camera to follow it, and that's going to make it so that the camera is going to kind of pan and follow our player. Okay, so basically the way we'll do that is using the events. So this is layout 1. I'm going to rename it overworld test. This here is going to be the first event sheet. I'm going to call it the game event sheet. And in game, I'm going to double click, and by default, just make sure your overworld is connected to your game there. Okay, you can link more event sheets through the game through something called an include mechanism. So it's not one limit, a limit of 1, don't worry, but that's, yeah, at least have to link it somewhere. And then we'll create an event, and we'll create something that basically is a system event, and it's going to happen every tick. Okay, every tick. So every tick, this is going to be ongoing, basically. we're going to take our 2D camera and we're going to say set its position. So scroll down, set position. Okay, and this is an area where we can enter certain kind of formulas. Okay, so the one formula we'll use is called lerp. If you're curious about this, you can check it out online. A lerp is basically linear interpolation. It's a pretty simple technique. You can just check it out. It's pretty much in every engine that exists, and any language that pretty much any language supports it. So we're gonna have to provide different kind of value, and I'll show you how it works. So we provide A, B, and X, and the way it works is that it's gonna take A as a starting point and move us towards B, and the way or the amount it moves us to from A to B is gonna be kind of a ratio that's based on X. Okay, so A and B are two numbers, a start and a finish kind of destination. And then X is a ratio between 0 and 1 that kind of defines the speed by which we go from A to B. So we're going to basically start by taking the 2D camera current position, so X, and our destination is the ground player current position. And the ratio we'll choose is 0.5 for now. And we can just copy this whole expression, and then we can just kind of change the 2-axis for Y and press enter. And that's basically all we need. Let me just zoom in so you can see my event sheet in a better way. This is all we need, these two lines, and this is going to sync up these objects. So it's going to make it so that basically we can kind of move and the camera is always following us. Now it doesn't look like we're moving very much because everything is white in the background. So for that, one quick fix we'll go through, and this is just going to be temporary, is we're going to insert a new object and we're going to create something called a tiled background. I'm going to call this a game base, or just actually not game, but just base grid. Okay, I'm going to click and I'm going to size it so that it's 32 by 32. All right. And then I'm going to pick the line, uncheck smooth, set the thickness to 1, and I'm going to set the color to white. And I'm going to just draw one line. I think it's need to get it right in the middle. So here, and actually it might be easier to just do it on the edge. So let's just do it on the edge like this. All right, it's hard to see. If it's hard to see, what you can do is there's a mode there. This, the background brightness, and there we can see much better our pixels essentially. So we can just press X, and there we have this thing there, as we can see. Okay, so now what we can do actually is just unselect this object, just click somewhere in your layer, and then click show grid. Okay, and click snap grid, and also put the grid size to 16 by 16. Okay, and bring this grid there, kind of. Okay, and also if you click on this layer, you can set a background color for it. So we'll say, just for now, 55, 55, 45. Okay, and this grid, we're just gonna scale it, and because it's a tiled background, this is basically like a pattern. Actually, we could do different things with this. Just I would like if we're able to. It'd be nice if we're able to get something like this. In fact. Is it what I want? Yeah, that's cool, but actually maybe I did want also this here, right? And there we have it. This is a 16 by 16 kind of grid thing. So we could stretch this out, could take our whole map, and this is a good chance for us to talk about what's happening here. The grid is on top of the player and the camera. So because we have the premium version, and if you don't have the premium version, you'll need to get it to follow along because it's going to be needed for many operations in this series. We're going to click up here and go in view and bars and set up the Z order. We're going to bring the Z order down here on this blue kind of component area, and it's going to snap in place. And with this, we can reorder the order of our elements, which are on this layer, essentially. This one looks like it's under, but it's just pale. And eventually we can even use more layers, but for now, let's just stay everything on the same layer. And let's just do a preview. And there we can see now what's happening is that we can walk around and our camera is following us. Okay, this is a very smooth movement. And something that is making it smooth is this operation here. Okay, and I'm just going to show you something real quick. I'm going to create this base layer. I'm going to call it game test. I'm going to create a layer above called debug test. Okay, so that's going to be another layer there. We're going to right click and insert a slider. Okay, put it here. And we're going to insert a text. Okay, just create the text, call it text. So we have text and slider. Text is going to be weird though. So text is going to be a bit weird. So before we do anything with text, it's gonna, and actually maybe even slider, these two objects, we have to treat them a bit differently. And I'm going to try to make it clear why, but it's going to be a bit weird for you beginners down there. So I'm going to create a new layout as well. And I'm going to call it add layout and just add layout. So no event sheet. This layout is going to be the objects layout with an underscore. And in there, we're going to put objects like these. Bring them. And by the way, this is a good chance to see what happens. So when I cut them away from here and I bring them here, if I remove them, you see there's going to be a message. It says you have deleted the last text. So by deleting the last instance of an object, you don't remove the object. As you can see, it's still here. But the first instance of an object is kind of like, there's not a name for it, but I like to call it the default object, basically. And the default object is the object that gets created whenever you drag something out from the project. So what I mean by that is that if this text is the first text of the whole game, okay, and let's say it's italic down there, and let's say it's of size 6, okay, then any other text I'm going to drag is going to have the same properties. Okay, and so what defines this rule is the first text, which is the default object. So the reason why I'm bringing text and sidebar here in this object layout is because I'm going to be needing their default a lot more than other kind of objects. Because sprite is a kind of object that I'm going to create lots of different variant, but the way I deal with text usually is that I kind of like to use something called a template to create different kinds of text. So this is going to be a default text. Its size is going to be, sorry, I messed up something. Its size is going to be 12 and it's going to be normal. This is going to be a default slider. And then I'm going to create another text, and this one I can just bring it actually into my level. And same thing for my slider. And these are now, they're not the defaults. And the reason why they're not the default is because if I click on text, we can see that this one has an ID of 7. And if I go to my objects and I check out this text, it has an ID of 6. So whichever has the lowest ID is actually going to be the one that is the default, kind of. And the same is true for the slider. This one is 5. And the one in my overworld test is going to be 8. These are not consecutive because of different reasons, but basically it's pretty much how it works. Okay, so these, I'm going to bring them there, and this one is going to be a template. So it's going to be kind of a special kind of text. That's what I'm saying. And making a template is a little bit like making a default object for an object kind. It's like a way for you to make sure you can recreate that later or do special kind of code or scripting for that text. So this one will be the current camera lerp. Okay, I'm gonna make that current camera lerp like that and prefix it with debug underscore. And this by default, the value will be -1. And here, this is also going to be a template. This is going to be also the debug current camera lerp like that. But since it's a slider, this one is a text, there's not really any conflict. And this slider is going to have a value going from basically 0.00001 to a maximum of 1. And in terms of steps, 0.0001. And in terms of steps, the steps are going to be 0.0001. Like that. All right. We're going to connect these two things. So we can go in the game and just on every tick, we can just basically do some things. So let's just on every tick, let's right click here on this very edge of the event and say add and add a blank sub event. And then we can double click and say that if the text we can compare its instance, not its instance variable, but we can actually, can we check its, no, we can't check it here. We have to do it differently. We have to go in system and we can pick an object by a comparison. So we're going to pick an object by a comparison. We're going to get our text. We're going to check which, pick the text that has the template name of debug current camera lerp, like that. Let's just spread this up and zoom out. So we're going to pick the text, which is debug current camera lerp, and also do the same thing for the slider. So slider, sorry, pick by comparison, slider, and it's going to be slider bar, like that as well. So we're going to pick these two objects and we're going to say that the text set its text to the slider bar value, like that. Let's just save, and I'm going to save the project, creature capture. All right. And we can just try it out. Oh, we didn't get anything printed out. I think the problem might be that this layout there has to be parallax 0, 0. And that's going to make it so it's a static layout that's always staying on the screen. And there we have it. We have our value there on the screen. The problem before was that the camera was kind of moving off. So there we can see there's a slider and I can increment it. Oh, it's going too high. I don't know what's up with that. Let's just check it out. So this, oh, it's supposed to have a maximum of 1. All right, there we go. So it's going from this amount to 1. And then finally what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be setting this value. So I'm going to say slider and unchanging or unchanged. Yeah, unchanged. So whenever the slider change, and actually instead of doing the here is something on every tick, we could also do something with the slider unchanging. we could do something slider unchanging. And then we could say system compared to value slider bar template name equal, I'm sorry, debug current camera lerp, and this we also put it here. So when the slider change and its name is this, and when it's changing and its name is this, and when it's changing its name is this. So when it's changing, we can just update the text, and we can just also pick the right text there. And when it's changed, we can basically, we don't need this anymore. We're gonna create a variable, press V, and we're gonna create current camera lerp, which is a number, which is gonna be 0.5 by default. And we're gonna say that when the slider changed, and this is the current slider, we're gonna say that basically this variable system set value, this variable should be the value should be the slider value. So this variable is gonna go here instead of this 0.5. So that way, the only reason I'm doing this, in fact, was quite complex, but that allows me to show you the effect of this behavior that we created. So let's just save. And another thing I want to fix is the default value here will be 0.5. So it's going to be the same value as this value. They're going to be synced up at the start. And also it's -1 by default. To fix that, we could say that the text gets changed, when this happens. But we could also, well, actually, we could also just set it up by default here. 2.5, that might be just the easiest solution, I think. So 0.5. Let's do that, actually. And let's just play it out. So this is 0.5. And then if I reduce this value, and then I move, you can see that the camera is much slower now. And I can even reduce it even more. And now it's like the camera is not even moving. So you can see that this small value at the end of your lerp speed controls the speed by which your camera kind of moves, essentially. So that's very interesting. Obviously, these I values are all the same. Like at this point, there's no difference. It's just gonna follow you. So really, you want to go somewhere lower. We can just try it out and see what we like. So all right. So something like 0.135 would be a good default. So 0.135 like that, and here like that. All right, and I'm also going to move that a bit ahead, and I'm going to bring in a new text, and you'll see why I like to have my text here as a default is because otherwise this would be my default and it would bring in these texts that are already templates and would be really annoying. So instead we get a nice default text. We can say that this text is nothing because it's just going to be a header. So usually I don't classify these, and I'm just going to say that this is going to be camera lerp like that. We're going to put it at 8 and we're going to put it to the right and center like that, camera lerp. Okay, and now I'm going to basically finish this video pretty soon, and I'm just going to show you how to make this layout invisible. So we're going to bring in our a new object called the keyboard. This is going to allow us to put in some key combination, and the first thing I want to do is have a key combination where whenever I press a key, so if I press G, I'm gonna basically go in system and set a layer visible. And I'm gonna set the layer debug test, and I'm gonna toggle. Oh, I can't toggle. I thought there would be an option there. So we'll have to do our own toggle. So just do that. So we're gonna press J, and then we're gonna do a sub event with B. Okay, and then we're gonna go there and layer. We're gonna check if the layer is visible. The layer debug test. If it's visible, we're gonna set it to invisible. And then with X, we can do an else block, and we can just bring this in and do visible like that. And now we have a little option which simply makes it so that we can hide this if we don't want it. So it's like a UI that we can hide to kind of, we can add more stuff to this, and it's going to be a way for us to kind of customize different kinds of options for as we are debugging our small game. So one last thing that we're going to be doing is one last one of these text. I'm going to bring this one, just zoom out. It's a bit hard to see the camera right now, so I'm going to make this grid way more pale, 15% opacity. Okay, now I see the camera. And I'm going to put this value here. I'm going to make a template called FPS counter. I'm going to put it bold and put it at 7. Right and center. No, right and top. And I'm going to put it 255 again. Like this. So this is going to be the FPS counter. We're going to sync that up by simply going in game and doing every tick. And then we're going to pick with the system, pick by a comparison. And we're going to get our text, and we're going to check if our text, its template name is FPS counter. Actually, let's add a prefix of debug, and we're gonna also make sure you don't put the quote there. That's a common error. We're also gonna put the same name there, and we're gonna say that the text here set the text to basically FPS, which is just the FPS. And now we have a nice FPS of 144, which is really nice. We're gonna try to keep this. So remember, we're on OpenGL1 right now with this. So this is gonna be a 2D game. So if you go with 3D, as I said, you might wanna play around with the settings. Make sure you get a good, smooth gameplay. And next episode, we're gonna start looking at how we can create different kinds of enemies and other kinds of behaviors and stuff like that. So I hope you had a good time watching my video, and I hope you learned a lot, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.